The year 1906 showed a gain of 12 members. The lodge now had 169 members in good standing. A business recession hit the country in late 1906 and early 1907. The lodge, because of its unusual heavy expenses the past year, was beset with financial troubles of its own. The situation became so bad that Base Lodge number 180 adopted a plan which was then being used by the Masons, that of asking the brothers to pay their dues a year or more in advance. This must have saved the day, because the records show that from December 1, 1906 to February 1, 1907, Butler encampment number 76 advanced $30 on their rent, and enough brothers paid in to make a grand total of $415. On February 18, 1907, it was voted to discontinue passing the act for the next 6 months. The lodge was notified on July 8, 1907, that Article 6, Section 50 of the Grand Lodge Constitution now provides that the lodge can donate the fees for initiation and the degrees in case of ministers who are active in a ministry. Nothing was said about the age of the minister would be deprived of this courtesy, but on March 8, 1908, the lodge voted to donate the fees only to ministers under 60 years of age. The blueprints for the hotel called for a partition in the center of what used to be used as a kitchen or dining room. Each lodge used this space as a reception room. On December 27, 1907, the Masons and Royal Arch held a joint public installation. According to their minutes, there was over 200 in attendance. At their next meeting, they voted to appoint a committee to meet with the Oddfellows and see if they were willing to have the partition removed and use the area as a combination kitchen and banquet room. Apparently, the Oddfellows were in agreement, because their minutes of February 3, 1908 say the partition committee reported that the work opening up the 2 reception rooms can be done for $8, the Masons agreeing to pay half of the expense. On motion, the work was ordered done. This explains why there are 2 sets of double doors leading into the hallway. In 1908, Base Lodge number 180 made an unsuccessful attempt to get the 1909 Grand Lodge session here in Butler. Instead, they voted to meet in Springfield, Missouri. The first time the minutes show a joint meeting with the Rebeccas was on June 15, 1908. The secretary writes, "It was decided that the Oddfellows meet at the hall on Sunday, June 21st, 1908, and that the Rebeccas be invited to join us and march to the M.E. Church South and participate in the memorial service." There were now 175 members. On March 22, 1909, Brother Clark Wicks presented the lodge with a gavel made from an old bedstead which was over 100 years old. The handle was made from a cedar tree which had grown on the John Brown's farm in Kansas. It was also in 1909 that the lodge tried to raise the annual dues. A printed circular was sent to all members of Base Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F, which was read as follows. Base Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F, Butler, Missouri. Dear Brother, a committee was appointed by the lodge a few weeks ago to revise the bylaws, made their report at the last meeting. On Monday, April the 26th, 1909, the question of adopting the bylaws as revised will be the main feature of the evening. The committee has recommended a raise in the annual dues and a limit on nurse hire. Also, that a brother must be sick 2 weeks to be entitled to sick benefits. Please come and help settle this matter, or forever after hold your peace. Signed, A.O. Yeomans, Noble Grand, Walter Arnold, Secretary. They did not adopt the revised bylaws, and all recommendations was voted down. On May 30, 1909, the members of Base Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F joined with the members of Bates County Post number 58, Grand Army of the Republic, and being led by the Butler Concert Band, marched out Pine Street to Oak Hill Cemetery, where a memorial service was conducted jointly by the Lodge and the GAR Post. The Lodge members were granted permission from the Grand Master to wear their Lodge regalia. The GAR members were in full dress uniform. Many of the townspeople joined in the line of march. The procession was so long that the services were held up 10 minutes so that the last ones in the line would arrive in time to witness the ceremonies. The Lodge paid $4.35, or one-half the cost of hiring the band. It was assumed the GAR Post paid the other half. The Lodge was saddened by the death of one of its most distinguished members, the Honorable David A. DeArmond, on November 23, 1909. Brother DeArmond had served as circuit court judge and was serving this district as congressman in Washington, D.C. On the above-mentioned date, he perished along with his grandson in a fire at his own home. The House of Representatives of the United States Congress recessed the day of his funeral and sent a delegation from Washington to represent the House and pay their respects. Many lodges, not only in Missouri, but from all over the nation, sent resolutions of respect to the Lodge and to his family. On October 17, 1910, Brother A.C. Culver presented a plan under consideration by other lodges and organizations to build a sidewalk out Pine Street from Main Street to the cemetery. He asked for a $25 donation from the Lodge. Both the Oddfellows and Masons voted that if the walk was built as per present plans, 4 feet wide, they would contribute to it. It was built per specifications and strictly by contributions. Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, paid their $25 on March 27, 1911. In April 1911, the Fraternal Inn Association and Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, jointly paid the cost of installing a railing on the right side of the stairway. It cost the Lodge $4. On Thursday, May 12, 1912, the Butler Daily Democrat ran a news item about a new organization known as the Bates County Oddfellows Association, being organized here in Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F. This was the forerunner of the Tri-County Association. In order to have some funds in the treasury, each lodge paid a per capita tax of 5 cents per member. By April 1916, the association was abandoned. Bates Lodge number 180 now had 186 members. The first joint public memorial service held with the Rebeccas in the hall on June the 9th, 1912. The first and one of the very few special assessments was voted by the Lodge on January 20, 1913. This was to create what was known as the Nurses' Hire and Relief Fund. So many brothers were sick and needed nurses' care that the Lodge's treasurer would not support such a program, so a $1 assessment was voted by the Lodge. On Thursday, March the 27th, 1913, the Butler Weekly Times carried a news item that was good advertising for the Lodge and Order. The heading was "Good Work by the Oddfellows," and read in part as follows: "That was a noble act on the part of the body of Oddfellows last Sunday, March 23, 1913, when they went down into Igloo Valley and practically done up the spring work for a sick brother. Andrew Condon, living in a place recently purchased from Walter Williams, had been sick for several weeks, and his place was suffering for need of attention. This fact coming to the attention of some of his brother Oddfellows, they quietly found out what the needs of the Condons were, and Sunday afternoon 16 of them went down and took possession. They were carpenters, plasterers, and all kinds of trades represented. They just went to it and finished things up for him in fine shape. The masons finished building the chimney in his home, and carpenters put on the ceiling inside the house. put on a porch in front and a curb at the well. Others staked out the orchards and set out 150 fruit trees that were there waiting to be put in the ground. Those who were present and assisted in their brotherly acts were as follows: Guy E. Green, F. W. Reed, C. H. Guy, D. H. McQuitty, H. E. Ward, E. P. Jackson, Charles Thomas, H. W. Bott, C. A. Tarwater, Henry Kraft, C. V. King, W. A. Stubbs, George Christensen, John Boyd, Will Strait, F. H. Jackson, and Frank Humphrey. The building committee of the Grand Lodge authorized the lodge at Sedalia to form what was called the Oddfellows Building Company of Sedalia and sell shares. Since Base Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. had so recently gone through a building program in conjunction with the Masons, they voted on September 1, 1913, to purchase one share valued at $25, but to withhold payment until officially notified that enough shares had been sold to complete the building. That confirmation was soon in coming, so now Base Lodge number 180 was shareholder in two different associations. It was decided to send Christmas presents to the children in the Oddfellows home. On December 15, 1913, Brother A.O. Yeoman reported that he had purchased 60 pounds of chocolate candy from Brother Zwollen for 14 cents a pound, and it had been sent to the home. It was also at this same meeting that Brother decided to have a big celebration in January for the 46th anniversary of the lodge. The newspaper account of this meeting is far too long to quote here, but the committee feels a meeting of this magnitude deserves more than just a brief mention in the history of this lodge. This celebration was held on Tuesday night, January 6, 1914. The Republican press devoted 2 long columns in their write-up, and the main theme was that 100 children in the Oddfellows home were well cared for and happy. Also, that no Oddfellows, his wife, his widow, or his children could be found in the poorhouse or the county home. The Butler Daily Democrat of Wednesday, January 7, 1914, came out with headlines: 46th Anniversary Celebration of the I.O.O.F. Butler Lodge number 180, a grand success. Then they went on to say, when we marched into the I.O.O.F. room, we were greeted by tables which were loaded down awaiting our service. When all were seated and the blessings of deity had been invoked, we paid our respects to what was set before us. What a treat the preachers who were present. We overheard one of them say, "We must do our best, for preachers and chicken are stranger in these days." District Deputy Grand Master A.C. Culver gave a brief resume of the lodge's history. He also gave some figures pertaining to the order itself. In the 94 years of its existence, Odd Fellowship has attained some victories. As of December 31st, 1912, it had enrolled 1,645,369 men in the subordinate lodges, 711,873 women in the Rebecca degree lodges. During the year of 1912 alone, it paid for relief of sick and disabled members of their families and for burial of their dead, $5,917,313.15, besides maintaining more than 40 homes. The history and principles of the order were discussed in a plain, forceful, and enlightening way by Dr. H.C. Tickner, pastor of the Presbyterian Church of Butler. He spoke as the son of a past grand of the Manchester Unity of Oddfellows in England, the mother of the American order. Mrs. Hannah Osborne followed this excellent address by reading one of the best papers we have heard on the Odd Fellowship of Women. It was a complete history of the Rebecca degree and one every member should be proud of. It covered the years from September 20, 1851, when the first Rebecca ritual was printed, and the degree itself conferred, to the present date. She spoke of the emblems of the degrees: the beehive, representing order and industry; the dove, consistency; the moon and 7 stars, denoting national truth; and the lily, the emblem of purity. These efforts were all applauded. A good time was had by all. The spirit of goodwill prevailed. All went home the better for having come together. Harmony and peace prevailed, and nothing occurred that would leave a bad taste in anyone's mouth. End of quote. With prices like they are today, we noted with interest the small advertisement in the back of the press. It said, "We will send the Republican Press and the Kansas City Star Weekly both for 1 year for $1.10. There were now 191 members. On January the 26th, 1914, the Lodge was notified that a new state law forbid the telephone company from giving free services to anyone. So one phone was taken out, the other one was moved to the center of the north wall in the kitchen, and the Oddfellows and Masons shared the expense, which was a total of $1.25 per month. The minutes of February 16, 1914 say about 8 o'clock a fire alarm was turned in, which proved to be in a building occupied by Black and Arnold Clothing Company. The brothers hurriedly left the hall without clothing in form. Scarlet fever was taking its toll those days. The A.O. Yeoman family was quarantined for 3 weeks, and the Lodge paid $10 per week sick benefits to the brother. The first mention of the use of automobiles by the Lodge was on April 27, 1914. Brother Thomas Lake died, and burial was in Rich Hill. The Lodge hired what was called automobile livery to take the brothers from Butler to the Rich Hill Cemetery. It cost the Lodge $12. There must have been at least 4 or 5 cars from the number of brothers reported to have gone. All the lodges in the district gathered at Rich Hill for the 95th anniversary celebration of the order. A program found in the minute book dated Friday, April 24, 1914, was just about like all the others, except plate lunches were advertised at 25 cents each. The fact that no contention ever existed between Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. and any other lodge or order was best exemplified on May 11, 1914. It was on that date that the Oddfellows Lodge of Butler and Rich Hill, and the Masonic Lodges of Butler and Rich Hill, and the Elks Lodges of Butler and Rich Hill joined hands to bury a brother by the name of William B. Weeks. In June 1914, the city of Butler purchased the privately owned water system for $32,500. Soon the monthly electric bill would also have the water charges too. On August 24, 1914, the Lodge voted to buy a rostrum curtains for the Nova Grand Station for $90, which included a wicket for the anteroom door. Pasted on the page of minutes for August 19, 1914 is one of many letters sent out by the secretary through the years. It was sent to the members who were either sick or who had not attended Lodge very regularly. We might be able to use this idea today. It reads like this: Hall of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., Butler, Missouri, October 25, 1914. Dr. John Everingham, Butler, Missouri, dear brother, Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., of which you have been an honored member for so many years, and have served her so faithfully in many ways, particularly as guardian of widows and orphans of deceased Oddfellows, wishes to remind you that while we do not see your face nor hear your words of wisdom anymore in the lodge hall, yet we often think of you and wish that we might have the pleasure of your presence with us occasionally at least. We trust that you will be feeling better and able to attend your customary duties. We assure you of our brotherly love and best wishes and ask you to feel free to command us at all times when we can be of any assistance to you. It is with a feeling of pride that we point to the young man who applies for membership among us, to such as you, who have helped to make this great order one of the grandest and best organizations in the world. Most of the old guard have passed on and joined the Grand Lodge above, where we hope to meet you and them when the grim reaper of death calls us home. Fraternally yours, Bates Lodge, number 180, I.O.O.F. Walter S. Arnold, Secretary. It seems that at every chance the lodge got, they had some kind of celebration. On Monday, January 18, 1915, they celebrated 3 occasions at once. The 96th anniversary of the order, the 47th anniversary of the lodge, and the 9th year of being in the Fraternal Inn building. This meeting made the front pages of the Republican press, but here again, because of its length, only a portion of it can be quoted. The Oddfellows, assisted by the Rebeccas, celebrated the 47th anniversary of the lodge and the 96th anniversary of the order in their rooms at the Fraternal Inn building Monday night, January 18, 1915. The Oddfellows and Rebeccas numbered about 250. There were about 150 invited guests, making a total presence something like 400. At 7 o'clock, the members began to arrive, and a little later, the invited guests. And by 8 o'clock, the Masonic Hall, which adjoins the Oddfellows Hall on the east, and the outside halls were a seething mass of jovial humanity. The spirit of good fellowship prevailed. The radiant smile and the hearty hand clasp was in evidence on every side. In the Masonic Hall, the Allen Orchestra discoursed the sweetest music, and while there was no one that said anything about tripping the lights fantastic, it was pretty hard for some of the younger folks to keep their feet still. At 8 o'clock, the Master of Ceremonies, A.H. Culver, announced that he would be glad if 150 of the invited guests would go to the dining room, the Oddfellows Hall, where 3 long tables had been arranged for the occasion. When all were seated, Dr. Tickner was to express thanks, after which Walter Arnold commanded all to fall to, which was quickly obeyed. After supper, the guests returned to the Masonic Hall, where Brother Webdell, pastor of the Baptist Church, was introduced and delivered a most excellent talk on the brotherhood of man. Mrs. Allen was next to speak on the program. She spoke of the 3 symbols of oddfellowship: friendship, love, and truth, characterizing and symbolizing the Rebecca degree, and when she had finished was loudly applauded. This concluded the evening program, and everyone went away loud in their praise for the Rebeccas and Oddfellows. Long before the United States entered the First World War, the following appeared in all the newspapers here in Butler under the heading, "Oddfellows Want No War," and the following was made a part of the minutes of March 8, 1915. The Independent Order of Oddfellows proposes to throw its influence of its great membership and worldwide organizations against war. As a part of the statewide, nationwide movement to this end, the following resolutions were unanimously adopted by Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., Butler, Missouri, at its meeting Monday night, March 8, 1915. Whereas a large part of the so-called civilized world is now engaged in the most gigantic struggle ever known to mankind, a conflict that is directly or indirectly affecting the lives and interests of every man, woman, and child in the whole world. And whereas complications are daily arising which are seriously endangering the peaceful relations of our country and threaten to bring to our doors the horrors of modern war. And whereas, believing that the united efforts of our great fraternity would have a far-reaching influence in promoting peace and preventing the spread of human strife, therefore be it resolved that Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. of Butler, the state of Missouri, composed of 195 representative men, that we sincerely regret these deplorable conditions, and hereby pledge ourselves to use every means in our power to support, uphold, and encourage every honorable effort that is or may be made, not only to preserve our own neutrality, but to end this bloody carnage. Be it further resolved that we impress upon the members of Congress, the President and his Cabinet, and all others in authority, the necessity of setting steady in the boat and not allowing questionable points of honor, now the desires of those who seek personal gain only, to influence them in their intercourse with the warring nations. And be it further resolved that we publish our position to the world, so that all man knoweth that friendship, love, and truth are not unmeaning words upon our lips, but the sincere desire of our hearts. Adopted at Butler, Missouri, this 8th day of May, 1915. J. F. Crabtree, Noble Grand. Walter S. Arnold, Secretary. Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. had always felt it was their duty and privilege to pay sick benefits whenever a brother was entitled to same. Brother R.T. Victor holds the record for drawing weekly benefits in this lodge. On July 15, 1915, when he died, he had drawn the benefits of $2 per week, exactly 1 year. On December 27, 1915, the lodge voted to buy all new regalia. The 12 main officers' robes cost $125. On Monday night, April the 24th, 1916, after lodge was closed, the Rebeccas were invited up to the hall, where the brothers showed off their new regalia by robing and exemplifying the drill work of their order. On July 17, 1916, it was decided to mark all Oddfellows' graves in Oak Hill Cemetery and other cemeteries close by. In going through 100 years of minute books, usually each book provides at least one good laugh. Perhaps one of the best laughs this committee has had that can be revealed was from the minutes of October 16, 1916. It seems that as yet there wasn't any stove in the kitchen, and the Rebeccas were planning a big banquet in the hall. And here I quote, "A motion was made to permit the ladies of the Baptist Church to cut a flue hole in the property room for the purpose of temporarily installing a cook stove in order to better serve the Rebecca supper tomorrow evening. Motion lost. A motion was then made to allow the ladies to place the stove in the hallway and run the stovepipe out the window. Carried. On January 1, 1917, Brother John S. Crinn was installed as Noble Grand of Bates Lodge number 180. At this writing, Brother Crinn is not only the oldest living member of this lodge, but is the oldest living past Grand. On February 5, 1917, the lodge bought 100 guest badges, and one was pinned on each visitor. On April 30, 1917, the lodge was saddened by the announcement of Brother Walter S. Arnold, the secretary, that he was resigning. He had served the lodge faithfully for over 14 years, and his service in that office would be missed. But the lodge voted to accept his resignation, also to buy him a veteran's badge, complimentary to his long years of service and loyalty to the lodge. Brother R.A.L. Sutton was elected to fill the unexpired term as secretary. Since the night of institution in 1868, Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. and Butler Lodge number 254, AF and AM, have always worked very harmoniously together, and this is still true today. If any contention had ever existed between these two lodges, this committee certainly would have found it. At least I would have, because it has been my pleasure to write the recent history of Butler Lodge number 254, AF and AM, just last year in 1968. On the contrary, after working weeks compiling material for the histories of both lodges, I have learned firsthand of the true friendship and brotherly love which has endured for over 100 years. I am unable to find any action taken by either lodge which will prove this more than the one taken by Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, on the night of June 18, 1917. The minutes will speak for themselves, and here I quote.
Again, it's time to turn the tape over.
Hall of Bates Lodge, number 180, I.O.O.F, Butler, Missouri, June 18, 1917. Lodge opened on time and in due form, with Noble Grand John S. Crinn presiding. Under communications, the Secretary read a communique from the Secretary of Butler Lodge number 254, AF and AM, requesting the use of the hall Monday night, June 25, 1917. End of quote. Remember, this was and still is the regular meeting night of Bates Lodge number 180, and has been for over 100 years. Farther on down in the minutes of that night can be found this motion. A motion was made that when we adjourn to meet on Wednesday night, June 27, so that the Masons can have the use of the hall on the 25th. Carried. For a lodge to surrender its hall on a regular meeting night so that another lodge of a different order can use it aroused my curiosity. Being a member of Butler Lodge number 254, AF and AM, and in view of the fact that the lodge voted to allow me the use of their minute books and their recent history while writing the history of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, I checked the minutes of their meeting on June 25, 1917, and found the following. The Grand Lodge of Missouri Masons decreed that all Masonic lodges in the state could celebrate the bicentennial or 200th anniversary of the formation of the first Grand Lodge of Masons on June 23, 24, or 25, 1917. In the year 1917, June 23, 24, and 25 came on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. My knowledge of that lodge and order tells me that they would not be allowed to deviate from one of these 3 days, but I was unable to learn why the celebration could not be held on Saturday, the 23rd of June. Yet I have no doubt if the situation were reversed, the Masons would do likewise. The 50th anniversary of the lodge was celebrated on January 14, 1918, but the newspaper account of that night is far too long to incorporate in this history, but were made a part of the minutes. On March 17, 1918, the Rebeccas entered into a contract with George Dixon for a new piano, the one we have now. His store was located at the corner of North Main Street and Chestnut, where the Butler Maytag is now. The subject had been discussed some in Bates Lodge number 180, so a $10 donation was sent to the Rebeccas. Otherwise, the piano was paid for by contributions from members of the subordinate lodge and Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238. The lodge purchased a service flag after the United States went to war, and as each member of the lodge went to war, the star was placed on the flag. It was about this time that a young postal worker petitioned the lodge for membership by initiation. He gave his name as Elmer J. Camel and dated the petition on September 16, 1918. The minutes of December 30, 1918 read, The outside conductor found the candidates-elect in waiting, namely Morse Benedict, Lloyd Brooks, Dr. H. H. Gloyd, Roy Burke, Charles Grout, J. S. Brown, Elmer Camel, James Stevenson, and W. N. Wilcox. They were introduced and properly shown the mysteries of the initiatory degree. Little did they know they were initiating a future Grand Master that night. Also, the lodge voted on the same night to raise a secretary's salary from $60 to $100 per year. There were now 198 members. The minutes of March 3, 1919, mention that Brother Lenhart called attention to the rebound Bible presented by Carnation Rebecca Lodge, number 238. The secretary was instructed to thank the Rebeccas in behalf of the subordinate lodge. On December 1, 1919, the secretary read a letter from the city of Butler notifying the lodge that as of January 1, 1920, the current being generated at the city-owned light plant would be changed from direct current to alternating current. This meant that all light bulbs would have to be changed. Also, the fans would have to be traded in on new ones that would run on the new current. Since Brother J. L. Fisher was owner of the Fisher Electric Shop and secretary of the lodge, it was only natural that he be instructed to remove the old fans and install new ones. The two new overhead fans installed cost $78. They also had to buy a new electric light meter. Those days, the property owners owned the meters. The lodge now had 198 members. Back in November 1915, the county dedicated what was known as the Bates County Infirmary, or the County Home. We know it today as the Pine Street Tree Rest Home, even though the people of Bates County own it. After it was completed, the county granted the churches, all the fraternal lodges, and other organizations who might wish to the privilege of sponsoring 1 or 2 rooms. The county would maintain the inside, such as painting, papering, and so forth. The sponsor would furnish the necessary furniture. The reward for doing this was to have a plaque with the sponsoring organization's name on it put up above the door on the door casing. Early in 1920, Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, decided to sponsor 2 rooms. It was voted to draw from the lodge's treasure enough money to furnish the rooms. After the furniture had been purchased and placed in the rooms, the Grand Master ruled that the lodge's money could not be used in this manner. So for several meeting nights, the brothers took up a collection and replaced the lodge's money. But the plaques stayed. Yet today there is a plaque above the doors of rooms number 16 and 18, which read Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F. To further aid the residents of the county home, the lodge voted on April 26, 1920, to pay the subscription rate of $3.20 for the Kansas City Star-Times and have it sent directly to the home. In fact, this was repeated for several years. At the Grand Lodge session of May 1920, Representative D.B. Rist of Adrian Lodge number 13, I.O.O.F, was elected Grand Warden. That meant he would have to resign his position as representative from District number 71 to the Grand Lodge. Brother R.L. Sutton of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, was appointed to fill the unexpired term, so this district would be represented. On September 4 and 5, 1920, the first Oddfellow Conclave was held in Kansas City. Bates Lodge number 180 had 35 present. Soon after the installation of officers in January 1921, the Masons wanted to use the Oddfellows Hall for their Washington Day banquet. Several brothers present knew that back on December 27, 1878, the Masons had approved an amendment to their bylaws which stated, on a motion, the Worshipful Master was empowered with the authority to let other Masonic orders and the Oddfellows have use of the hall for festival occasions without bringing the matter before the lodge, carried. And that's still true today in 1969. Brother W.O. Atkinson and A.C. Culver said they felt it was time for Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. to return the courtesy which had been extended to this lodge by the Masons over 42 years ago. Noble Grand O.B. Ray felt the discussion should be tabled until a larger crowd was present. On February 14, 1921, what is known as a permanent resolution was voted unanimously by Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. And here I quote, "It was moved and carried that we let the Masons have the use of our hall in the future when it is necessary for them to, in case of some entertainment or special meetings. We, the committee appointed to write the history of Bates Lodge number 180, feel that these two resolutions exemplify the relations between these two lodges better than any comment we might make." On April the 26th, 1921, the Grand Lodge of Oddfellows of Missouri held a huge celebration of the 102nd anniversary of the order in Springfield. Bates Lodge number 180, Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238, Butler Encampment number 76, and Canton Mount Pleasant number 20 Patriarchs Militants held their own celebration in their hall. The Canton in uniform drilled the Patriarchs, which was very impressive. The Rebeccas also put on their drill. The subordinate lodge furnished the refreshments. The year 1921 was the first year the sovereign body of this order was called anything but the Grand Lodge of the United States. From 1921 on, the official name has been the Sovereign Grand Lodge of the Independent Order of Oddfellows. The name Grand Sire was not changed at this time. Oddfellowship had grown to where it was now recognized worldwide. Brother Alex H. Lamb died on December 22, 1921, and was buried in National Cemetery in Springfield, Missouri. He was not a charter member of the lodge, but was initiated on the night of institution, January 6, 1868, and had served it for 53 years. Because of the death of Grand Sire Joseph Oliver in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Deputy Grand Sire Lucius J. Easton of Missouri became Grand Sire. He was the Grand Master who assisted in laying the cornerstone of the Fraternal Inn building in 1906. The minutes of February 13, 1922 mention an organization known as the Law Enforcement League was being formed here in Butler for the purpose of assisting law officers to suppress vice of all kinds and law violations. The brothers of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. were asked to become members of this organization. After lodge, several brothers signed up. Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. made its first application to the Home Board of the Oddfellows Home Association on April 24, 1922. The secretary reported that Brother Frank Oldacre, a member of the lodge, had lost everything he had in a fire and was in need of funds. Also that he desired to make application for admission to the Oddfellows home. The lodge voted to give Brother Oldacre $10 for assistance and instructed the secretary to write for the proper papers. The home board approved his application on May 22, 1922, and the lodge paid his train fare to Liberty. At the May 1922 Grand Lodge session, the first member of the order from Bates County was installed Grand Master of Missouri Oddfellows. He was Brother D.B. Rist from Adrian Lodge number 13, I.O.O.F. at Adrian, Missouri. On June 26, 1922, the secretary read a letter from Adrian Lodge number 13, I.O.O.F., requesting their help in laying the cornerstone at the new schoolhouse in Adrian. On July 17, 1922, Brother Elmer J. Campbell was installed Noble Grand of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F. During Brother Campbell's term in office, the Bates County Free Fair Association invited the lodge to hold a conclave during the week of the fair, which was from October 7th through October 13th, 1922. The lodge accepted their invitation. So did Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238, Butler Encampment number 76, and Canton Mount Pleasant number 20. All of the Oddfellow and Rebecca lodges in the district were invited. The committees from the Butler lodges worked out all arrangements with the fair officials. On Friday, October 12, 1922, a mixed team from the subordinate lodges conferred the initiatory degree, first and second degree, on 13 candidates. Then a candidate from the lodge at Urick appeared for the third degree. This made 14 candidates to receive the third degree. The minutes state that on Friday afternoon, the patriarchs militants and all Oddfellows, Rebeccas, and encampment members marched around the square, preceded by the Butler concert band and followed by all the livestock which had been on exhibition during the 4 days of the fair. After the parade, the patriarchs militants marched into the courthouse yard and after drilling for some time, conferred the degree of chivalry on Sisters Anna Shane Osborne, Faye Gibson, and Lizzie Ross. On Friday night, the encampment degree was conferred on 6 candidates with Grandmaster D.B. Rist from Adrian in the chair. Then Canton Mount Pleasant number 20 was opened and the Patriarch's militant degree was conferred on 3 candidates. While this work was going on in the Oddfellows Hall, Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238 was holding an open meeting in the Masonic Hall for all Rebeccas and visiting ladies who had accompanied their husbands to the conclave. At the close of the Rebecca program, a ladies' auxiliary to the Patriarch Militant was formed with 12 members. The minutes say that at the proper time, Bates Lodge number 180, Carnation Rebecca Lodge 238, Butler Encampment number 76, and Canton Mount Pleasant, Patriarch's Militant, was closed. And it was signed by Elmer J. Campbell Noblegrand of Bates Lodge 180, Nina L. Culver, Noblegrand, Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238, Harry H. Van Dyke, Chief Patriarch, Butler Encampment number 76, and Ari L. Sutton, Captain, Canton Mount Pleasant number 20, and A. H. Culver, Secretary, Bates Lodge number 180. I think it would be fair to say this was a pretty good day's work when 23 candidates were shown the mysteries of Oddfellowship in one calendar day. By this time, I expect everyone connected with any of the 4 above lodges was ready to retire. It seems that in late October or early November 1922, the streets here in Butler were in need of repair. The lodge felt that the city of Butler was more or less dragging its feet when it come to street repairs, especially East Pine Street to the cemetery. So they decided to solicit some money, take some from the lodge's treasure, and hire the repairs made. The minutes don't say how much the work cost, but $30 was taken from the treasure. On October 30, 1922, Secretary Culver read a letter from Reverend T.C. Brammer, President of the Ministers' Alliance, extended an invitation to the Oddfellows, the Rebeccas, the Masons, and the Eastern Star to meet jointly at the Baptist Church in what was called a Union Thanksgiving service. The Oddfellows accepted. So did the others. The meeting was held on November 30, 1922, and was the first joint meeting ever held by the 4 organizations. On December 11, 1922, the Secretary was instructed to run an advertisement in the local newspapers asking for discarded phonograph records. The ad stated, so did the minutes, that the records would be sent to the residents of the Oddfellows home in Liberty for Christmas presents. But a word of caution was added. The records must be for use on the following machines: Edison, RCA Victor, or Columbia. At the May Grand Lodge session in 1923, it was voted that all subordinate lodges must raise their sick benefits to $2.50 per week. so the lodge changed their bylaws accordingly. On August 27, 1923, the Grand Sire of the Sovereign Grand Lodge ordered that all branches of the order drape their charter for a period of 30 days in honor of our late brother and president, Warren G. Harding. By June 1924, Brother Elmer J. Camel had been elected representative to the Grand Lodge from District Number 71. On September 29, 1924, an amendment which had been offered to the Lodge 2 weeks before was passed. Among other things, this would raise the annual dues from $5 to $6 per year. Also, the weekly sick benefit was raised from $2.50 to $3 per week. On July 20, 1925, Secretary Culver reported that a meeting had been called here in Butler for the purpose of establishing a hospital. The City Council, representatives of the Church Board, the School Board, and the fraternal organizations were invited. Noble Grand Elmer R. Sturgeon appointed Brother Clyde E. Robbins to represent Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. The Master of Butler Lodge number 254 A.F. and A.M. appointed E.A. Reed to represent their lodge. On that same night, July 20, 1925, the Oddfellows voted to lend their moral support to the proposed hospital. Of course, most of us remember it was finally established and was located at 107 South Havana Street, across from where Charlie Fisk lived and where Orville Jackson lives today. On September 19, 1925, was the 50th wedding anniversary of Brother A.C. and Sister Julia Culver. The members of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., and Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238 presented them with 2 gold-trimmed candlesticks. On Thursday, December 10, 1925, the Rebeccas held an all-day session in the hall. They informed the Oddfellows that if they would lay out all regalia that needed mending, they would be happy to do it. The Oddfellows obliged. On March 1, 1926, the lodge had McCall's radio shop set up a radio in the hall so that they could hear a special Oddfellows program on the CBS network from Fort Worth, Texas. They had a candidate for the initiatory degree that night, but when the program came on the air, a recess was declared, and both they and the candidate listened. On May 14, 1928, it was suggested that the Rebeccas be invited to help Bates Lodge number 180 build a float for the parade on July 4th of that year. Then, finding themselves short on time, it was voted to invite the Oddfellows and Rebeccas in the district to build a float for the parade on Old Settlers' Day. $50 was advanced by Bates Lodge number 180 to get their float started. The other lodges, including the Rebeccas, paid their part of the expense. The parade was held on August 29, 1928. The knights and ladies notified the lodge that they were moving to another hall on the south side of the square, at number 15 West Dakota Street, or where the J.B. Fleming studio is today. No sooner had they moved when the lodge had another application to rent the hall. The James P. Arnold Post of the American Legion and the Auxiliary were applied to rent the hall. No sooner had the Auxiliary been instituted than they had to vacate the hall they were now using. The James P. Arnold Post number 46 and the Auxiliary were tenants of Bates Lodge for some time. Sunday, October 7, 1928, was another sad day in the history of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. It was on that day that both the Oddfellows and Masonic lodges were called into special communication for the purpose of conducting the burial service for Brother A.H. Culver. Quoting from the history of Butler Lodge number 254, A.F. and A.M., I now offer the following. When the brethren came downstairs, more than 75 master masons and many members of the Eastern Star, also many brothers and sisters of the Oddfellow and Rebecca Lodge, were waiting. The members of the 3 orders and the Eastern Star chapter were formed in procession under the direction of the marshal,
and marched to the Presbyterian Church. There the religious services were conducted by Reverend Dickey and Reverend Brammer. The oration was delivered by the Honorable Carl J. Henry. The body was laid to rest in Oak Hill Cemetery. End of quote. On March the 4th, 1929, the trustees of the lodge reported they had rented the hall to the Modern Woodmen of America for $180 per year, with all utilities furnished. They further agreed that the woodmen could subrent the hall to the Royal Neighbors of America if they wished to, but Bates Lodge number 180 considered the lease agreement was solely with the woodmen. The Royal Neighbors had previously rented from the Oddfellows and continued to do so until 1968. Brother Elmer J. Campbell was now secretary. South of Butler, U.S. Highway number 71 was still under construction, so the county roads were used. On June 24, 1929, Secretary Campbell reported that Brother Henry McElwain, a member of Base Lodge number 180, had died in St. John's Hospital in Iola, Kansas, and was buried at Rich Hill, Missouri, on June 22, 1929. He said the roads were absolutely impassable, and that none of the brothers from Bates Lodge were able to attend the funeral. Resolutions of respect were sent to his widow. Homecoming Day at the Oddfellows home in Liberty has long been a gala occasion. On July 29, 1929, a report was made that there would be an excursion train made up at Joplin, which would pick up members of the order along the way and would arrive in Butler at 7:30 a.m. the morning of August 4, 1929. On the return trip, the train would be arriving back in Butler at 9:30 p.m. same day. Round-trip fare would be $2.50. The train was usually loaded by the time it got to Pleasant Hill. This was the ideal way to attend the homecoming every year, since the fare was reasonable. Several times it had been tried to increase the attendance at Lodge. It was voted that each brother who attended Lodge on Monday night, September 23, 1929, would receive a free ticket for two, good for the midnight show at the Fisk Opera House on Saturday night, September 28, 1929. The minutes of September 23rd, 1929 don't mention how many were in attendance, but Noble Grand Max Sproul mentioned that he was well pleased at the nice turnout that night. Judging from the minutes, everyone was pleased because a motion was made and carried that the Rebecca degree team, which was meeting in the Masonic Hall, be invited to have lunch with the Oddfellows. They were serving roast pork sandwiches and coffee. The secretary, Brother Elmer J. Campbell, paid for the lunch and the opera house tickets. As mentioned before, each minute book usually provided at least one laugh. According to the minutes of January 6, 1930, the secretary, Brother Campbell, was instructed to write the I.O.O.F. Lodge number 31 at Enid, Oklahoma, requesting 3 weeks sick benefit for one of their members, Brother J.H. Smith, who was living here in Butler. The doctor's certificate stated that the brother had been bitten by a cat. It used to be the custom to have the daily proceedings of the Sovereign Grand Lodge mailed to a few lodges in each jurisdiction. In September 1930, the Grand Secretary notified Bates Lodge number 180 it had been selected as one of the 15 lodges in the state of Missouri to receive the daily proceedings, and that they would be mailed from Indianapolis, Indiana. Since the 1929 stock market crash, many things happened, both in the lodge and the country in general. Brother Campbell suggested that the secretary's salary be cut from $100 back to $60 per year. Even then, there were times the lodge couldn't meet its expenses, and the secretary's salary was omitted or returned to the lodge. The brother who had been bitten by the cat decided he and his wife would go to the Oddfellows' home in Oklahoma. So Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., again offered help in getting his papers approved. But before he could leave, his wife died, so the members of Bates Lodge number 180 acted as pallbearers, and she was buried in Oak Hill Cemetery. On June 15, 1931, Brother Smith left for the Oddfellows' home in Choctaw, Oklahoma. On November 2, 1931, he was back in Butler again. This time he wanted to be admitted to the Bates County home. Bates Lodge number 180 took the position that although the brother had perhaps violated every rule in the book, they would still help him. Noble Grand Claude Jundy contacted the Bates County Court, and arrangements were made to have him admitted, where he remained until he died. The year 1931 was the 75th anniversary of the city of Butler. On September 11, 1931, during the Free Fair, a big parade was held. All the antique cars in the county were called in, floats were entered, and even old-time prairie schooners and horse-drawn hearse was entered. The Oddfellows and Rebeccas built a float and entered it in the parade. But times were hard and money scarce, and speaking as one who participated in the parade, the spirit just wasn't there. Owners of the lease of the Fraternal Inn Association notified the lodge that effective October 1, 1931, the rent would be raised from $12.50 to $20 per month, and that would only be true for 6 months. Attendance was down in all lodges. Sometimes the brothers of Bates Lodge number 180 would have to make 4 or 5 telephone calls in order to get out a quorum. On October 5, 1931, Brother W.O. Atkinson made a strong plea to the brothers not to abandon the orphan children of their day, whether they were members of the Oddfellow families or not. As the secretary wrote, that gave us something to think about. The lodge was soon to be denied the wisdom and counsel of Brother Atkinson because he died on October 16, 1931. His mark will remain on Butler and Bates County for years to come.
The history of Bates Lodge 180 will continue on tape 5, side 1.
He not only compiled the history of Bates County, from which some of this history was taken, but he acted as legal advisor for Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, for many years. Money was so scarce that on March 7, 1932, the secretary read a letter from the local committee of the Citizens Reconstruction Organization relative to hoarding of money. He urged that a united effort be put forth to cause enough publicity that those having money hoarded would put it into circulation. Since the lodge's treasurer had only $32.33 in it, they didn't feel as if they were hoarding too much money. Over the years, the lodge had weathered several crises, but on the night of March 14, 1932, a new and different one hit them. This was when 2 young businessmen by the name of Fred and Forrest Hours sent their petition in for consideration. Instead of the Noble Grand Ben Plunkett declaring a state of emergency, he ordered the brothers to hold a practice session in the initiatory degree at the next meeting night. Apparently he wanted these 2 candidates to receive the full treatment. This they did on Monday night, March 28, 1932. Of course, we're only joking. These 2 brothers went on to serve as Noble Grand, and 37 years later, Brother Forrest, by coincidence, served on this committee to write the lodge history. He is a member of all branches of the order and is what we would call a full-time member. Then came the bank moratorium. On Monday, December 19, 1932, all the banks in the United States remained closed. The moratorium was to last for 1 week. The lodge certainly wasn't hoarding any money this time either. Their cash balance showed $22.06. The depression was now in full swing. Bates Lodge number 180 was to weather the financial storm better than most lodges. Each year they received a dividend check from their shares in the Fraternal Inn Association. The Rebeccas and the encampment branch of the order started paying rent. The woodmen were still using the hall. another lodge known as the Yeoman's Lodge was renting it too. Rent from these organizations certainly helped the finances of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F. Occasionally, the hall was rented for one-night meetings, like Monday night, May the 8th, 1933. At their meeting on May 1, 1933, the lodge trustees notified the brothers that the hall had been rented to the Chevrolet division of the General Motors Corporation for a divisional meeting, and that Bates Lodge number 180 would hold their next meeting in the Masonic Hall. To keep up interest in the lodge and order, a traveling gavel was presented to the different lodges, but it had to be earned through a point system connected with some kind of a contest. On July 7, 1933, Dr. F.H. Matthews, Grand Master, approved the consolidation of Spruce Lodge number 609, I.O.O.F., with Bates Lodge number 180. In this transaction, the lodge acquired all the paraphernalia, some furniture, and a building with a small tract of land in Spruce. Later, the property was sold, and the rest brought to Bates Lodge number 180. Early in December 1933, there was talk about finding another hall. The Masons, too, were thinking about some other hall. The committees of the two lodges started looking. First, they considered the Security Benefits and Association Hall, better known as the Knights and Ladies. It was located at number 15 West Dakota Street over what is now the J.B. Fleming Studio on the south side of the square. Next was the upstairs portion of the two Warnick buildings located at number 11 and number 15 North Main Street on the east side of the square. Goldie's Beauty Shop and the L.D. Discount Store occupy these buildings now. As a third alternative, the committee took a look upstairs over the Bennett Wheeler building located at 101-105 North Main Street, or the northeast corner of the square, and owned by Mayor O.A. Heinlein. That's where Furniture City and McGuire's real estate offices are today. The committee felt that none of these halls had adequate space for two lodges. This may or may not have been a war of nerves directed at the landlord, but the message got through, and on January 1, 1934, each lodge secretary had a letter stating that as of that date the rent would be lowered to $15 per month. On January 21, 1935, Brother Forrest Ours was advanced to the Noble Grand's chair, and his brother Fred was installed Vice Grand. At 9:30 p.m. Tuesday night, September 17, 1935, a special program was presented by the Sovereign Grand Lodge, then meeting in Atlantic City, New Jersey, was presented nationwide over the CBS radio network. A joint meeting was called with the Rebeccas to hear the program. Radios were set up, and after the broadcast, refreshments were served. So many had been dropped for non-payment of dues that permission was granted to reinstate any brother for $3 during the last part of 1935. On January 6, 1936, a proposal was made and carried that the lodge extend for 90 days the $3 reinstatement fee. On nights when there wasn't any degree work, the lodge used to set up a kangaroo court, charge some brother with a crime, and have court. This proved lots of fun and provided good, clean entertainment. The first joint installation ever held between the Oddfellows and the Rebeccas was on the night of January 14, 1937. Naturally, it had to be an open meeting, so the general public was invited. According to the minutes, about 200 attended. On May 19, 1937, about 40 Oddfellows and Rebeccas from Butler went to I.O.O.F. Lodge number 13 at Adrian, Missouri, to help celebrate their 50th anniversary. Several of the members from Butler had parts in the program. At the Grand Lodge session in May 1937, Brother Elmer J. Camel was elected Grand Warden. This meant that before long, Odd Fellowship in Missouri would be looking to Butler for its leadership. On January 10, 1938, Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., voted to join the Tri-County Association of Oddfellow Lodges. This association included the lodges in Bates, Henry, St. Clair counties, and Humanville in Polk County. The association is still meeting today. 1938 was famous in the history of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., for another reason. On April 14, 1938, 3 days before his 18th birthday, Brother Lester Ours petitioned the lodge for membership by initiation. Since the investigating committee could not report for 1 week, Brother Ours would have a birthday and would be 18 years old. The committee reported favorable, and he was initiated on April 11, 1938. He holds the distinction of being the youngest man ever to be initiated into Bates Lodge number 180. On May 16, 1938, another young man, one who was later to direct the affairs of this city for 4 years, petitioned the lodge for membership by initiation. Today, we know him as Mayor Glenn O. York. We can still call him brother, too. On Wednesday, May 24, 1939, Brother Elmer J. Camel of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., was installed Grand Master of Missouri Oddfellows at Mexico, Missouri. This was the 101st meeting of the Grand Lodge of Missouri. Past Grand Master D.B. Rist of Adrian Lodge number 13, I.O.O.F., at Adrian, Missouri, was installed Grand Treasurer. Brother Forrest M. Ours was installed Grand Marshal of the Grand Lodge. Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., sent Brother Camel a telegram of congratulations after his installation. At the same Grand Lodge session, the Rebecca State Assembly was meeting, and Sister Helen Prater of Calhoun, Missouri, was installed Assembly President. The Butler Daily Democrat came out with headlines, "Honor New Grand Master, Reception and Banquet Held for E.J. Camel." The item in the Democrat is far too long to quote here, but the committee feels a portion of it should be made a part of this history, and here I quote. On Friday night, June 2nd, 1939, Elmer J. Camel of this city, newly elected Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Missouri Oddfellows, was a guest of honor at a banquet and reception. The banquet in the dining room of the Christian church was served to 112 persons by the ladies of the church. The Rebecca Lodge colors of pink and green was used in table decoration. Bouquets of pink carnations and snapdragons with pink tapers and green holders formed a very attractive centerpiece. Small cut-out camels was used as favors. Following the banquet, an informal reception was held in the I.O.O.F. Hall, and more than 200 enjoyed the excellent program prepared for their entertainment. Past Grand Master W. M. Shaw of Kansas City introduced the distinguished visitors and honored guests present. Among those introduced was the Grand Master's family, the new Rebecca Assembly President, Mrs. Helen Prater, and her husband of Calhoun, Missouri, George S. Sterrett of Columbia, Missouri, Deputy Grand Sire of the World of Odd Fellowship, and many other past Grand Masters and past officers of the other branches of the order. The success of the event was largely due to the committees. The General Committee was composed of Lloyd W. Brooks, C.A. Bolin, John Bowie, Mrs. Minnie Miller, Miss Anna Kennedy, and Miss Anna Crinn. The Reception Committee was Mrs. Nell Bolin, Miss Kate Miller, and Miss Bessie Blankenship. The Decorating Committee was Miss Edith Fuller, Miss Etta Maddox, and Miss Ruby Rook. This is the first time in the history of the local lodge that it had been honored by having a member reach the high office of Grand Master. End of quote. As a matter of comparison to today's prices, the banquet tickets that night were 65 cents. Now the focus of attention as far as Odd Fellowship was concerned was on Butler, Missouri, Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F., and the new Grand Master. By getting a special dispensation from Grandmaster Camel, Brother Lester Ours was installed Noble Grand of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. Of course, by now he was acknowledged to be the youngest Noble Grand in the state of Missouri. He was just 19 years old. But he had time to come to Lodge, even though he wasn't married. The Sovereign Grand Lodge session in 1939 was held the week of September 18th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There, Brother George S. Sterrett of Columbia, Missouri, was installed Grand Sire of the Sovereign Grand Lodge of the world. He was destined to be the last man so titled. His successor would be called the Sovereign Grand Master of the Sovereign Grand Lodge. Under the date of November 21, 1939, Grand Sire notified all Grand Secretaries to inform the subordinate lodges as follows. Every member of the order who secures 10 or more members for any branch of the order within the period beginning October 1, 1939, and ending June 30, 1940, will receive from the Grand Sire a meritorious service pin. Bates Lodge number 180 and all other lodges in Missouri heard a call from the new Grand Master to increase the membership by at least 10%. Bates Lodge must have heeded his call because the records show there was degree work almost every night. Like all Grand Masters, during his term, Brother Camel had the usual dispensations, proclamations, and decisions to make. In compliance with the requirements of the laws and customs of the order, he submitted his report to the officers and representatives of the Grand Lodge in Boonville, Missouri, on Tuesday, May 28, 1940. Much could and should be quoted from this report. The committee feels that due to the length of this history, we can only refer you to the 1940 Journal of Proceedings of the Grand Lodge of Missouri, I.O.O.F. However, there are two short quotations taken from Brother Camel's report, which this committee feels should be included in this history. The first one is on page 10 of the journal, and I think speaks well of Brother Camel's term as Grand Master, and here I quote. You will observe from the Grand Secretary's financial report that in spite of a loss in membership, we show a much better financial condition. At the beginning of the year, we owed a $5,000 note, which we have paid, and have not had to borrow any during the year, thus keeping within our income. End of quote. There's a good lesson in that paragraph. On page 14 of the same journal, Brother Camel was talking about the proclamation sent out by the Grand Sire in November 1939, and here again I quote, I am proud to report that the first pin received in Missouri was presented by the Grand Sire in person to past Grand Forrest Ours, Grand Marshal of the Grand Lodge, and a member of my subordinate lodge. End of quote. According to the records of this lodge, Brother Ours received this pin at a meeting in Joplin, Missouri on January 26, 1940. On January 15, 1940, Brother Lester Ours was installed into the past Grand Chair, still just 19 years old. As far as the ritual is concerned, the flag ceremony is optional. On March 26, 1940, Brother Forrest Ours brought up the idea of using the flag ceremony at the opening of each meeting. Motion was put to a vote and carried. It is still practiced today. At their meeting on June the 10th, 1940, past Grand Master Brother Elmer J. Camel presented Brother Lester Ours with a Grand Sire's meritorious pin. This made 2 awards made to members of Bates Lodge number 180. On July 7, 1941, the rent was raised back to $20 per month, effective August the 1st, 1941. On August 25, 1941, the lodge bought their first all-electric sign and placed it near the stairway on the east side of the hotel. On October 27, 1941, the lodge voted to assist the Lions Club in gathering old toys, repairing them, and distributing them to the needy families in the town at Christmas time. After Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, things were to change, and not exactly for the better. Both the Oddfellows and Masons were losing their young members to the war. The Oddfellows voted to remit the dues of any member being called into military service. The Masons wanted to discontinue the telephone. The committees of the two lodges met, and it was decided to leave the phone in if the Oddfellows would assume the expense of the natural gas for the cook stove and heater in the kitchen. This was put to a vote in Base Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. and carried. By February 1943, 21 members of Base Lodge number 180 were in the military service of their country. The remaining brothers would take their names and write to them. On September 23, 1943, the lodge voted to hire a nurse for Brother Rice Thomas. His was the last time the lodge was called upon to perform this duty. In January 1944, the lodge started buying Series E war bonds. On January 17, 1944, it was decided to have a little fun of a different nature. It was voted to have an eating contest between Brother Charles Robertson and Brother Floyd Holt, minister of the Methodist Church. Brother Robertson didn't feel it was fair to match him against a preacher. He said the preachers had had more experience. I was never able to find out which one was declared the winner, but I would say Brother Charlie was, because he's still with us. The lodge wasn't exactly prepared for what was to happen on the night of February 28, 1944. They had weathered good and bad years, wet and dry ones, the grasshopper years, and the Dust Bowl days. But this was something else. A young fellow by the name of Fred M. Nigley petitioned the lodge for membership by initiation. After the brothers regained their composure, the acting nobleman, Brother J.J. Beach, appointed Brothers Charles Robertson, Elmer J. Campbell, and the city marshal, John O'Day, to investigate the petitioner, and, if they could agree on their findings, make a complete report to the lodge at the next meeting. After some persuasion, the committee was able to convince the brothers on April 3, 1944, that the applicant was of sound mind and body and just might make them a good member. After the vote was taken, with more than the usual precaution taken in handling the ballot box, he was declared elected. After the election, it was decided to have initiation at once. When the outside conductor was sent to the anteroom, he found Fred Nigley and Henry Whalen in waiting. As the candidates entered the lodge room, all doors were locked and the shades drawn, and they were initiated according to the customs of our order. In all seriousness, I must tell you that this was a wise decision on the part of the brothers of Bates Lodge 180. Today, in 1969, Brother Fred is not only the secretary of the lodge, but is the chairman of the committee appointed to write its history. However, I will say that these last two paragraphs have not been approved by the chairman. On August 28, 1944, the Oddfellows and Rebecca had a joint meeting which was open to the public to celebrate the 93rd anniversary of the Rebecca degree. To date, this was one of the few meetings where the Oddfellows were guests of the Rebeccas. On September 11, 1944, the lodge had what was called Senior Members Night. This meeting was to honor Brother Walter S. Arnold, a former secretary who joined Bates Lodge 180 I.O.O.F. in 1889. Others present were Brothers James A. DeArmond, a member since 1900, H.C. Klinkenbeard, who joined in 1901, John S. Crinn, who joined in 1904, and Brother Harv Garrett, who had been a member of the order since 1885. A nice program was rendered and refreshments were served. Before the evening was over, Brother Arnold was heard to comment, "When you're among brothers like this for 55 years, your time certainly hasn't been wasted." On September 25, 1944, Brother Eugene P. Wilson was appointed chairman of a committee to contact the brothers who had not been attending lodge. Their average attendance for some time had been 16 or 18, never over 20. It was reported that there were 33 brothers here in town that just didn't come. The committee must have done their work well, because the next meeting there were 43 in attendance. On November 6, 1944, a communication was read from the Sovereign Grand Lodge in the form of a manifesto asking all members of the order to aid in speeding the victory, support the churches, public affairs, charities, and the promotion of higher standard of citizenship in every community. It suggested that the manifesto be read often to the lodge so that each member could get a clearer understanding of it. Still heating with coal, the brothers started talking about buying gas heater. Brother Floyd Holt suggested they buy semi-anthracite coal. He thought it would burn longer and keep the room warmer. Then someone suggested putting a gas burner in the old coal stove, along with some fire brick. On October 14, 1946, it was voted to try this, and it worked very well. During this period, Brother Campbell had attended an executive meeting of the Grand Lodge officers in Springfield, Missouri, and reported for the first time in the history of the Grand Lodge, the Grand Lodge session for the year 1945 had been postponed because of the war. On May 14, 1945, the Lodge voted to donate $30.25 to the purchase of a flagpole for the Boy Scouts' new building located at 404 West Fort Scott Street, and Brother Charles Robertson was appointed a committee of one to see that it was erected. Something vastly different from the past was tried for the first time in December 1945. It was decided to appoint a godfather to see that each new candidate got to lodge the first 6 months after having taken the third degree. Also to instruct him as to some of the unwritten as well as the written rules of the order, that he might benefit from the past experience of the brothers. This was in effect for some time and could very well be used today. Sugar was still rationed in early 1946. Brother Elvin Spears was appointed to see if he could get the lodge's allotment raised. He succeeded. It was my pleasure to visit Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. for the first time on February 18, 1946. After being examined to their satisfaction, a visitor's badge was pinned on my lapel. I was escorted into the lodge room, properly introduced, and certainly made to feel welcome. The secretary reported on September 23, 1946, that the new electric clock, which was hanging on the north wall, was presented to the lodge by Brother J.J. Beach. The lodge extended their thanks to Brother Beach, and the clock is still in use today. On March 31, 1947, the lodge heard a report on the four-state conclave which was held in Topeka, Kansas. Brothers Elmer J. Campbell, Dr. J.E. Painter, and yours truly, Leonard Miller, attended the meeting where 136 candidates were initiated at one time. On April 7, 1947, when the brothers came to lodge, they found the Bible stand in the center of the floor had been reconditioned and refinished by Brother Charles Robertson. The Rebeccas had requested the brother to do this, and they furnished the material. Soon after installation of officers in January 1948, Noble Grand Raymond Mundy and Vice Grand Jess Brakefield discussed how to increase attendance and create more interest among the brothers. It was decided to have a contest, the Noble Grand and the Vice Grand, to choose among the membership, and the losers would have to feed the winners. Points were given for new applications, reinstatements, as well as attendance of the two teams. Since I was about the only one attending lodge who was not a member of Bates Lodge number 180, I was elected umpire. Their goal was 52 in 48. That meant 52 members in the year 1948. The Noble Grand's team was called the Mundyites, and the vice grand team was called the Breakfielders. By May 1, 1948, 17 had been initiated, 6 by transfer and 8 by reinstatement. After the Tri-County Association meeting on May 24, 1948, with 146 in attendance, the lodge felt they should have some tables made that could be set up and taken down quickly. Brother Charles W. Ott reported that the Masons were of the same opinion. On July 12, 1948, the Oddfellows appointed Brother Charles Robertson, C.B. Balker, and V.H. Gear as a committee to work with the Masons. The Masons appointed R.A. Ellis, R.S. Trumbull, and Harley Johnson as their committee. The tables were made in Garland Fuller's garage and the expense shared by the two lodges. The expense was $38.41 each, and Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. allowed their part of the bill on May 30, 1949. On December 6, 1948, the lodge voted to investigate the possibility of buying a new neon sign. On February 7, 1949, a motion passed unanimously to buy the sign. This is the one that is in use today. On December 15, 1948, the lodge bought all new officers' cord regalia. When the end of the year came, the Breakfielders, or the vice grand team, had won the contest, so the losers had a big feed on December 27, 1948. On January 10, 1949, the lodge voted to present each past grand with a past officer's cord regalia, provided he attended 20 nights out of the possible 26 nights in one term. This was for the junior past grands only, and the brothers were eligible for only one collar. On March the 6th, 1949, Brother James A. D. Armand died. This was just one of many large funerals conducted by the lodge. On May 16, 1949, Brother Walter S. Arnold died, another sad day in the history of the lodge. On January 9, 1950, Brother C.A. Burt Allen was eligible for a 50-year veteran's jewel. A big celebration was planned for Brother Allen, but due to ill health, he was unable to be here. On May 15, 1950, past Grand Master Brother Elmer Campbell drove to Columbia, Missouri, and made the presentation. On January 16, 1950, the lodge voted to buy some used chairs, which Mr. Fisk had after replacing them with new ones in the Opry House. Enough material was furnished by Mr. Fisk free of charge to refinish the chairs. They are the regular lodge room chairs in use today. Several of the older members of the lodge and Rebecca's decided to have a card party and square dance. The American Legion Hall of the James P. Arnold Post number 46 was rented for this entertainment.
With only 22 seconds left, once again it is time to turn the tape over.
During the winter of 1949 and 50, the Oddfellows, Rebecca's, Masons, and the Eastern Star bought 4 dozen folding chairs to be used jointly. These chairs cost $60 per dozen, and on April 17, 1950, Bates Lodge number 180 sent the Masons a check for 2 dozen of the chairs in the amount of $124.40. Later, the Rebeccas paid Bates Lodge their part. On December 18, 1950, the Pass Nova Grant Club of the Rebeccas presented the lodge with a 50-cup coffee maker. The Oddfellow Rebecca Picnic had been an annual event for many years. In 1951, it was held early, March the 9th, and was held in the American Legion Hall so the older members could attend. On April 2, 1951, it was voted to present each new member a third-degree cord regalia, provided he attended 75% of the first year as a member. In 1951, the year of the big flood, because of high water, the District Deputy Grand Master of District Number 70 could not get to Appleton City to install officers. On July 30, 1951, Noble Grand Earl Wells of Base Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. stated that the Grand Master had requested his deputy in District number 71, Brother Elvin Spears, to take his installing team to Appleton City and install their officers. The next night, July 31st, 4 carloads of brothers from Butler carried out the Grand Master's instructions. In September, the Lodge started talking about buying highway signs, and they voted to buy same on November 12, 1951. On September 17, 1951, the Grand Lodge of Missouri Oddfellows was called into special session to assist the flood victims of the state. In February 1952, the kitchen was painted and a new linoleum put down. The expenses were shared by the Oddfellows, Masons, Rebeccas, Eastern Stars, and the Royal Neighbors. Actually, this was nothing new because any expense pertaining to the kitchen, the bill had been split 5 ways for years. On February 25, 1952, Brother C.A. Burt Allen died and was buried in Oak Hill Cemetery with Oddfellow rites. Several improvements were made in 1952. The Lodge sign was enameled so that it would stand the weather better. A regalia wardrobe large enough to accommodate both Oddfellows and Rebecca was built with Brother Wilbur Hastings as chairman. Nationally, General Eisenhower was elected to his first term as President of the United States. On January 12, 1953, Brother Fred Nigley, the present secretary, was installed Noble Grand. That year, the regalia cabinets were finished. Several members of the Lodge bought auto tags for their cars, which read Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., Butler, Missouri. Some can still be seen on cars. On March the 2nd, 1953, the Lodge voted to present each new member a gold 3-link pin. This is still being done today. There is an old saying among Oddfellows which is more or less used to establish the fact you are a member of the order, which goes something like this: I see you have traveled a little, or I see you've been to Jericho. There is little or no significance between this saying and the actual work or teachings of the various degrees. One member of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. soon found out he had not answered this question correctly. Brother Harry Weiss had belonged to the Lodge only a short time when he won a chance to appear on a popular television program known as Welcome Travelers in Chicago. Brother Weiss told this story on himself on May 25, 1953. It seems that he was on the way home when he stopped at a service station to purchase some gasoline. The station attendant, being an oddfellow, remarked, I see you've been to Jericho. To which Brother Weiss answered, Oh no, I'm just getting in from Chicago. Soon they would find they were brother Oddfellows. On September 14, 1953, Brother Charles Robertson spoke of some interest among the townspeople in the proposed swimming pool. That was to come several years later. In order to have some recreation before and after Lodge meeting, the Lodge voted to buy a pool table in April 1954. In 1955, there was some talk about instituting a junior lodge for boys, but no action was taken. In 1956, the Lodge put up a tombstone for each member of Bates Lodge number 180, buried at the home cemetery in Liberty, Missouri. The year 1956 was famous for another reason, too. It was the centennial year for the city of Butler. Brother Charles W. Ott, a member of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F., was appointed general chairman of the Butler Centennial Executive Committee. Mayor Tyner and the city council worked very hard to make this celebration a success. So did all of the city employees. The Centennial Committee had books published which sold for 50 cents each. The men grew beards and the women wore long dresses and buttoned shoes. Brother Arnold Hancock was appointed to work with the Centennial Committee and make arrangements for an Oddfellow Rebecca float in the parade. The main program started on Old Settlers Day, August 31st, 1956. That night at the football field where the pageant was held each night, Miss Nancy Graham was crowned Centennial Queen. Miss Graham is now Mrs. Jack Baker. Each night there was a mammoth fireworks display. It was a colorful event with parades, contests, and general confusion thrown in to make it seem more like the old-time free fair. Getting back to the history of Bates Lodge number 180, the excitement of the centennial had hardly died down when the lodge was notified on September 24, 1956, that one of its most respected members, Brother C.E. Culver, had passed away at his home in Tucson, Arizona. The year 1957 was just an average year for the lodge until October. That year, the Grand Encampment met in Bethany, Missouri. Past Grand Master Brother E.J. Campbell was installed Grand Patriarch of the Grand Encampment of Missouri. One of the first acts of the new Grand Patriarch was to sign the charter for Lady Wagga Theater Club number 45 at Adrian, Missouri. On Wednesday night, December 11, 1959, a special reception was held for Grand Patriarch Campbell in the Lodge Hall. About 175 were in attendance. Many past Grand Masters, past Grand Patriarchs, past Presidents of the Rebecca State Assembly, and other dignitaries of the order were there, including Sister Helen Prater, who was Rebecca State Assembly President while Brother Campbell was Grand Master. 28 girls from Lady Wagner Theater Club number 45 at Adrian presented a beautiful drill. It was through the combined efforts of Bates Lodge number 180, Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238, Butler Encampment number 76, Adrian Lodge number 13, I.O.O.F, and Adrian Rebecca Lodge number 449, and Lita Wagga Theater Club number 45 that made the program such a success. In October 1958, Brother Campbell joined a group of distinguished Oddfellows, having served both as Grand Master and Grand Patriarch. Very few men can claim this distinction. On October 27, 1958, Amaret Lodge number 631, I.O.O.F, was reactivated and is still active. On January 23, 1959, Representative and Brother George Christophers died in Washington, D.C. Once again, the House of Representatives of the United States adjourned the day of his funeral and sent a delegation from Washington to represent the House. On March 2, 1959, the Lodge sent $10 to the relief fund of the Grand Lodge to help care for the victims of the tornado that struck St. Louis. The 5 organizations meeting upstairs over the hotel decided to buy a kitchen stove. On April 6, 1959, Bates Lodge number 180 paid its part, which was $4. On October 31, 1960, Brother John S. Crinn received his 55-year Veterans Jewel. As of this time, he is eligible for a 65-year jewel. On December 23, 1963, the home of Brother E.J. Campbell and the lodge was saddened by the death of Brother and Sister Campbell's only son, Brother Erland Campbell. He had been a member of the Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F for 26 years. On October 12, 1964, Noble Grand Brother Buford Berry gave a new candidate, Brother Robert Wheatley, a pocket ritual, and after having taken the 3rd degree, the Lodge presented him with an Oddfellow pin. In the early part of 1966, the Rebeccas offered to have the officers' chairs reupholstered and refinished. The Lodge accepted their offer on January 24, 1966. The material and labor cost the Rebeccas $109.50, but the chairs looked new again. The Grand Lodge started a retreat area on the Lake of the Ozarks and offered any member of the order a chance to buy lots. On June 6, 1966, the hall rent was raised to $35 per month. This made the brothers think about trying to get their own hall, and if possible on the ground floor. But this will be covered a little later on in the history. On June 9, 1966, one of the really good workers in both the Odd Fellows and Masonic lodges passed away, Brother Lloyd W. Brooks. The lodge would certainly miss this brother because there was hardly a part in any degree he didn't know. On July 9, 1966, another faithful brother passed on, Brother E.R. Smith, Sr. He had served the lodge many years as secretary and was scribe for the Butler encampment, number 76, at the time of his death. Two good brothers whose places would be hard to fill. There was still talk about acquiring another hall on the ground floor, whether it be owned by the lodge or rented. Talking got down to earnest on the night of October 24, 1966. There was a committee appointed to look around and see what they could come up with. Also, on the same night, the lodge voted to raise the annual dues to $10. That way, the lodge would be in better position financially to consider another hall. In January 1967, Brother Lee Vanoy made a nice display case that would hold an officer's collar. And on February 27, 1967, E.R. Smith, Jr. appeared at the anteroom door and announced his presence. A recess was declared and Mr. Smith was conducted into the hall. On behalf of his two brothers and himself, he formally presented the lodge his father's past grand collar. This was very much appreciated by the brothers who had known and worked in the lodge so many years with his father. On March the 6th, 1967, Brother Charles W. Ott notified the lodge he and his wife were in a position to make a sizable contribution to the lodge in case they decided to build or buy another hall, and that he would do so at once. The lodge started a building fund on March 20, 1967, so that any member or non-member could contribute if they wished. The first building considered by the committee was the Church of the Nazarenes on South Main Street. The Masons, too, were looking for another meeting place. Brother Ott made the same offer to them. The church would not afford enough space for two lodge halls. A price of $5,750 had been submitted to the Odd Fellows for the Nazarene Church, but the brothers were not very interested. The Pure Milk building on East Mill Street was discussed, but it too didn't seem to hold much in the way of accommodations for a hall. On December 4, 1967, Brother Forrest Ours, a member of the committee to procure another meeting place, reported that the Wines building, located at 205 West Dakota Street, could be bought by the Odd Fellows and Masons for the price of $10,000. With a great deal of emphasis, the owner made it clear that this price was being offered only to Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. and Butler Lodge number 254 AF and AM. Otherwise, the price would be $15,000. It was voted to allow the trustees to cash what bonds the lodge had, provided the hall committee did enter into a contract with the Mason to purchase the Wine building. So the two lodge committees immediately went to work. At this same meeting, Brother Elmer D. Miller was elected Noble Grand for the ensuing year, and Brother Paul O. Rapps was elected Vice Grand. The committee from the Masonic Lodge notified the Odd Fellows that as of December 1, 1967, their lodge had voted to enter into a contract with Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. to purchase the Wines building, providing the sale price was $10,000, and if it met with the approval of the building committee of their Grand Lodge. On December 11, 1967, Bates Lodge number 180 voted on a similar motion which carried unanimously. It too had to be approved by their Grand Lodge. The negotiations proceeded smoothly and the entire transaction was completed by December 30, 1967. As a show of appreciation for being considered by the Odd Fellows in the purchase of the new building, the Masons voted to give Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. their choice of halls, the east or west side. After all, it was through their efforts that the Masonic Lodge was given the opportunity to help buy the building. New Year's Day fell on Monday in 1968, so there wasn't a quorum at Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. But the Masons held their regular meeting on Friday night, January 5, 1968. They were informed that they were now property owners and would have to appoint a committee to work out arrangements with the Oddfellows in regards to upkeep of the building, utilities, insurance, and so forth. They also would have to elect property trustees, something they hadn't had since the days they were meeting over the courthouse. On January 8, 1968, the Oddfellows had their first meeting of the new year. Having trustees was nothing new for them because they had always had them. Everyone present approved of the purchase of the new hall, and work was to begin at once. There was plenty of work to do. First, the two lodge trustees met and decided the best way to lay out their work. One of the very first acts of cooperation between the Oddfellows and the Rebeccas was for the Rebeccas to assume the responsibilities of buying the new carpet for the hall. A partition had to be erected down the center of the building and soundproofed. All overhead air ducts were taken down and put beneath the floor. The furnace and air conditioner were moved to the basement. A stairway to the basement was built. An outside door for entering the basement from the street level was in their plans. Almost all wiring and plumbing had to be replaced. A ladies' restroom was built where the furnace had been. During this time, the women from both the Rebeccas and the Eastern Star would serve coffee and sandwiches to all the workers. It would have been hard to tell an Oddfellow from a Mason. Each helped the other whenever possible. Many of the brothers in both lodges contributed time and material of considerable value. A sink and drain board was built and installed in the dining room. Cupboards for both lodges were built and erected over the sink, and nowhere can a lock be found in the dining room. A small portion of the east end of the dining room was partitioned off as a regalia room for the Eastern Star and Rainbow Girls. When the trustees of Bates Lodge number 180 paid Mr. Gary Hoover for work on the ceiling, his bill was $79.44. He gave the lodge $19.44 to apply on the rug fund. Mr. Hoover is not a member of either lodge, but his contribution was appreciated. Here the committee would like to pause just a moment and give credit where credit is really due. The following paragraph is dedicated to Brother Charles W. Ott and his wife, Sister Myrtle. It was no secret that both the Oddfellows and Masons and their affiliates wanted to leave the Fraternal Inn building and locate on the ground floor. Being a past grand of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. and a past master of Butler Lodge number 254 A.F. and A.M., Brother Ott had heard many discussions in the lodge about the desire to own their hall, jointly or otherwise. Sister Myrtle is a past noble grand of Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238 and a past matron of Butler chapter number 478, Order of the Eastern Star. She too had heard the members discuss how they would like to be on the ground floor and own their hall. Many members of the four organizations would like to come to lodge or chapter, but just couldn't climb the stairs. When it became evident that the Oddfellows and Masons were going to purchase the Wines building, this was when Brother and Sister Ott made their contribution to the lodges. Without their help, these halls would not appear as they do today. In fact, I doubt very much if either lodge would even be here. Otherwise, we would still be meeting on the third floor of the hotel building. Somewhere in the degree work of these four organizations meeting here, I have heard it said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Brother and Sister Ott must have remembered their teachings well. because few can remember when the works of the Good Samaritan had been better exemplified here in Butler. You did not pass by on the other side. Seeking no special privileges or recognition, they have gone quietly about their work of helping others whom they felt were worthy of such help. In the past, Butler has had others who contributed to worthy projects, which would be beneficial to many of its people. But their contributions have seldom equaled and never excelled what you did for these four fraternal organizations in December 1967. This committee, appointed to write the history of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F., had specific instructions from its members to convey to you as best we could their heartfelt appreciation. To say thank you is not enough. It is their earnest hope and prayer that they prove worthy of the trust and confidence you have placed in them. While the work was going on in the new hall, the lodge continued to hold its regular meetings in the old hall. A dispensation was obtained from the Grand Master to move into the new hall. After the paneling was on, the carpet laid, the lodge moved into their new quarters. The first meeting in the new hall was on the night of May 5, 1968, before dedication. The Tri-County Association of Oddfellows met in the hall on June 3, 1968, when a candidate from Adrian Lodge number 13 I.O.O.F. was initiated. The hall was formally dedicated for Oddfellows use on Sunday afternoon, June 30, 1968, according to the customs of our order. About 120 attended. On September 30, 1968, the city of Butler installed a new Mercury street light at the northwest corner of the building. The first member of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. to be initiated in the new hall was Brother Mac L. Kane on June 17, 1968. In the fall of 1968, I was busily engaged writing the history of Butler Lodge number 254, AF and AM. Since I needed some information which I felt could be found in the minute books of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F., I appeared before the lodge on the night of October 28, 1968. At the proper time, I requested the use of their minute books, so that I might be able to make a more complete history for the Mason. A very unusual request, to say the least. The minutes of that night say, motion was made and seconded to allow Brother Miller the use of the record books to write the history of the Masons' Lodge. Carried. After the Masons had their centennial celebration on Friday night, November 22, 1968, I returned the records to Bates Lodge number 180 to their secretary, and on behalf of the Masonic Lodge, thanked them for the use of same. On November 25, 1968, there was some discussion about writing the history of Bates Lodge number 180. The minutes of that night show that Noble Grand Brother Elmer D. Miller appointed a centennial committee consisting of Brother Fred M. Nigley, the secretary, Forrest M. Hours, and Edward L. Berry. They were instructed to prepare a complete and detailed history of the lodge for the last 100 years. Not being a member of Bates Lodge number 180, officially I could not be appointed to the committee, but the Noble Grand asked that I be an honorary member and assist the brothers. I was happy to accept. At their meeting on Friday night, December 6, 1968, the Masonic Lodge voted to accord me the same privilege as to their records and recent history as the Oddfellows had done. Since it had been my pleasure to work with the centennial committees of these two lodges the last 8 months, I feel qualified to state this was just one of the many, many times through the last 100 years the lodges have exemplified that the hand of friendship and brotherly love extends from one hall to the other. Two great lodges separated only by a man-made partition. A lodge history would be incomplete without giving credit to those faithful workers of the past, and the present too. Just a few recorded in the minutes of this lodge are John H. Mills, the first Noble Grand, Alex Lamb, A.M. Christian, William C. Long, A.H. Culver, J.R. Baum, John S. Crinn, W.O. Atkinson, C.E. Culver, Dr. H.M. Cannon, E.R. Smith, Sr., and others. Brother Walter S. Arnold served as secretary 23 consecutive years. Brother C.B. Balker served as inside guardian 23 consecutive years. Brother L.R. Thomas served as outside guardian 18 consecutive years. Brother E.R. Smith, Sr. served as secretary 15 consecutive years. Brother Fred M. Nigley served as secretary and still serving as secretary as of this date, 15 consecutive years. Brother A. H. Culver served as secretary 14 consecutive years. Many distinguished names appear on the records of this lodge. Just to name a few are David A. DeArmond, George Christopher, Charles W. Ott, Glenn O. York, and others. The only one to attain distinction in the Grand Lodge was Brother Elmer J. Camel. He served as Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Missouri of Oddfellows the years 1939 and 40. Also as Grand Patriarch of the Grand Encampment of Missouri the year 1957 and 58. The statistics of the lodge are more than just impressive. With the absence of 2-minute books, the committee made every effort to present an accurate account of its labors. From January 6, 1868 to April 26, 1969, the lodge has held more or less the following meetings and performed such services as listed herein. Regular meetings, 5,134. Special meetings, 203. Conducted funerals 208 times. Conferred the initiatory degree, and this is an accurate figure, 748 times. Conferred the first, second, third, and the fourth degree before 1885, an equal number of times. Admitted by reinstatement, deposit of withdrawal card, transfer, and dismissal certificates, 51. Total membership, 799. Conferred the degree of Rebecca 87 times. Conferred many degrees for other lodges. Spent for relief of its members, and this too is an accurate figure, $5,463.29. The largest membership the lodge ever enjoyed was 201 members in 1928. By coincidence, the Masons had 200 members the same year. Statistics for subordinate lodges of the order throughout the world from the year 1830 to December 31, 1967 are as follows. Initiations in subordinate lodges, 6,759,257. Members relieved, 7,691,170. Widow families relieved, 630,148. Total relief of all of its members of all branches of the order since the year 1830 to December 31, 1967, $421,048,735.06. This information was furnished by Sovereign Grand Secretary A. Ford Winters. A photocopy requesting this information and his reply can be found elsewhere in this history. Also a report of the Sovereign Grand Secretary on the state of the order.
To continue this history, please play side 1, tape number 6.
We are now to the last page of the history of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, Butler, Missouri. Before I read it, I would like to make an announcement, which I believe should be made here, or the listeners to this tape might miss what I feel is one of the best parts of the Lodge history. After the names of the committees are read, I will make an announcement that the following is a part of a program which was held in the hall on Sunday, April 27, 1969. So please listen for it. Thus we have the history of Bates Lodge number 180, I.O.O.F, for the first 100 years. I would like to quote one last paragraph from the history of Butler Lodge number 254, AF and AM, which definitely applies to this lodge. And here I quote, "Starting in its infancy with little or no funds, meeting in an ancient frame building with sawdust on the floor, having a coal stove for heat and kerosene lamps for lighting. Today, as we celebrate our centennial year, our home is a modern air-conditioned hall equipped with electric lights, central heating, and a carpet, not sawdust, that cost more money than the entire building and lot did where we were instituted. To the uninformed, it should be made known and should always be remembered that Odd Fellowship has never laid down a new law of life. It has never pretended to be a religion or a substitute for religion. Neither has it discovered a new duty to heaven or to earth. The belief of Odd Fellowship is in a supreme being, each to worship his Maker in the church or denomination of his choice without qualification. Basically, the covenant of Odd Fellowship is the golden rule. True it is, we have built some special structures or ways of expression, enforcing rights and preventing wrongs, some special modes to wipe away the tears of sorrow and lighten the burdens of the depressed. We have also provided ways to educate our young people that they might have a richer and more complete way of living. Thomas Wiley himself prescribed the commands of our laws: to visit the sick, relieve the distressed, bury the dead, and educate the orphan. Throughout the years, the story of Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F reveals a generosity of donations towards charity, support of the community and its churches, participated in civic drives and general assistance to many who were destitute, both within and without the order. In addition to those many areas of community service, it has been for years a constant supporter of the Oddfellows' home. By skill, industry, and zeal, there have been practiced outside the lodge what had been learned therein. These fine deeds can only be done with well-founded pride. And it's signed by the committee: Fred M. Nigley, Chairman; Forrest M. Howers; Edward L. Berry; Elmer D. Miller, ex officio member; Leonard C. Miller, your narrator and honorary member of the committee; and Paul O. Rapps, 1969, Noble Grand. Thank you. The next few minutes on this tape is a part of the program held jointly with Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238 on Sunday afternoon, April 27, 1969. All the Oddfellow and Rebecca Lodges in the district were invited, also members of the Masonic Lodge and the Eastern Star Chapter. We not only celebrated the centennial year of Bates Lodge number 180, but the 150th anniversary of the order. A condensed history of the lodge was given by means of a tape recording. The Butler Weekly Democrat of May 1, 1969, carried 2 pictures taken at the meeting, along with a nice write-up. One of the pictures was of Brother Elmer J. Campbell receiving his 50-year Veterans Jewel. The other was of the presents which were presented to the lodge. These presents included The History of the Lodge by Butler State Bank, a desk lamp which was the gift from Carnation Rebecca Lodge number 238 here in Butler, and a centennial gavel and plaque from the First National Bank of Butler. First to be heard will be the presentation of Brother Campbell's 50-year jewel. It was presented by Grand Master Brother Darrell R. Cope, but pinned on his lapel by Brother Campbell's granddaughter, Patty Campbell. Let's listen.
Your Master of Ceremonies, I would like to address the crowd as properly I should. Sister Betty, President of the Rebecca Assembly, Sister Harris, Grand Matriarch of the Grand LEA, all officers of all branches of the order, grand officers, both past and present. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure for me to have this privilege. I don't know what the granddaughter of Brother Campbell's name is, but I want her to have the honor of pinning this jewel on Brother Campbell. And Brother Campbell, would you and her please rise and come up here where I can talk to you and still stay close to the microphone?
You don't have to stand there, baby.
I'll just give you the pin. Brother Campbell, it is indeed a pleasure and an honor for me to present to you a 50-year jewel denoting your 50 years of service to the Independent Order of Oddfellows. And as most of you know, Brother Campbell was Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Missouri during the year 1939 and 1940. He also was Grand Patriarch of the Grand Encampment of Missouri during the year 1957, 1958. And I want to tell you, as I'm sure that you, as his neighbors and friends, all know, that when you want something done in the Independent Order of Oddfellows in Missouri, just call on Brother E.J. Campbell. I have yet to see him refuse or even look for an excuse when he's asked to do a duty in Grand Lodge or in his own subordinate lodge. And I'm sure that all of you have calculated in your own mind that Brother Campbell has given 50 years to our order, which denotes 1/3 of the lifetime of our order. And I want to say to you, congratulations, and may you have many, many more years of service to our order.
I sure thank you.
Would you like for me to have the honor?
Well, Patty, I will.
Okay.
Since Ms. Campbell is not... Okay. Wait.
I'm glad to do this.
Get you over around here.
The Grand Master is now handing the jewel to Brother Campbell's granddaughter, who in turn is starting to pin it on his lapel. She seemed to be having a little trouble getting it fastened. Now she has it. She turns and kisses her grandfather.
I've received a number of honors and courtesies and so forth, but I want to honestly say this is the best of all I've ever received. And I leave it to Bates Lodge 180 and Carnation Rebecca Lodge that I've been able to do that and do what little I could. Thank
you. Now we have come to the highlight of the meeting, an address by the Grand Master. Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, Grand Master Darrell R. Cope of the Grand Lodge of Missouri Oddfellows.
For ceremony, Sister Betty, President of Rebecca Assembly, Sister Harris, Grand Matriarch, all Grand Lodge officers of all branches of the order, past and present, sisters, brothers and friends, future Oddfellows and Rebeccas. I'm not going to take up much of your time. I know you're getting tired, but I want to say thank you to the Bates Lodge for the invitation to be with you and to help celebrate your 100th anniversary. This being the 150th anniversary of the founding of our order, we have heard some wonderful history concerning Bates Oddfellow Lodge. The committee is to be commended on the work that they have done. Just stop and think just for a minute and reflect of the many, many hours of research that has gone into this report. It is a wonderful report. And I would like to talk to you just a minute about some programs that we have to offer today. I'm sure you're all more or less familiar with them, but we have been listening to the history of Odd Fellowship. So let's reflect on some of the programs that we have to offer today. The Sovereign Grand Lodge supports a program known as the United Nations Pilgrimage Tour. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and I hope that you support it, because it is a program that we, as Odd Fellows and Rebekahs, are the only ones who have the privilege of sending delegates to the United Nations. And if we do not maintain this program, if we do not support it, then I'm sure there are many other organizations who would be proud to have this opportunity. Another project that we have, or another project that we support and are privileged to participate in, is the placing of the wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. That is another thing that we should be proud of, because we are the only fraternity accorded those privileges. We also have in the trophy room at the tomb of the unknown soldier 2 jewels or decorations of chivalry that have been conferred on the soldiers, the unknown soldiers. We support the World Eye Bank. Now in Missouri, we do not hear so much about the World Eye Bank through the Oddfellows, because the Lions Club sponsors the Eye Bank in Missouri. But we as Oddfellows and Rebekahs have the privilege of donating our eyes to this project and designating them as a gift from Oddfellows and Rebekahs. We also have at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, what we call a chair that has been endowed by you as Oddfellows and Rebekahs through donations in the amount of $625,000. That much money has been raised to support this chair, the study of the human eye. And you might ask yourself, or you might ask me, why spend all this money on the study of the human eye? Just look around you this afternoon and look at all the people wearing glasses. And when you stop to think about it, there's only 1 or 2 operations that have been perfected with the human eye. There's much to be learned in relation to the diseases of the human eye. And we're not to use this initial donation or this endowment of $625,000 for the purpose of supporting this research, but we maintain this research from the earnings of this fund. And we have this grant set up, or this foundation set up for a period of 30 years. And at the end of 30 years, we have the option of renewing our chair at the Johns Hopkins University, or we can use this $625,000 in some other benevolent cause. We also, I say we because we are the Sovereign Grand Lodge, we also have the educational foundation, which makes it possible for many of our young people to become educated who would be deprived of this privilege otherwise. This money is to be loaned to our young people at a very nominal rate of interest, and to be repaid after they have completed their education. And I'm sure you probably realize that I keep reflecting back to our young people. But actually, what better thing can we work for than our young people? Because what we do for our young people, we actually are doing for ourselves. And in Missouri, as you all know, we have the Oddfellows home up at Liberty, which is not very far from here. And I'm sure most of you saw me placing these pictures over here on the desk. Those are new pictures that were taken about 60 days ago of our home. And I want you all to look at them when this meeting's over. We hope, we're not sure yet, but we hope to be able, through the Grand Lodge office, to offer those pictures to each subordinate in Rebekah Lodge in the state of Missouri at a nominal fee. We are in the process of finding out. Actually, to be honest with you, I'll find out 2 weeks from yesterday what it will cost to have the picture reproduced. And then I will be able to tell the representatives at Grand Lodge, and they can bring the message back to their respective lodges. And then if they're interested, we might proceed to have those pictures made. Also, I want to tell you that Grand Lodge this year will be held in Lebanon, Missouri. And that is 4 weeks from today. The time is soon to be here. We would like to invite you to come to Lebanon and attend our Grand Lodge and Rebecca Assembly session. Lebanon isn't so far away. Again, I want to say thank you for the invitation of being with you. And in closing, I would like to read to you a valediction wrote for the Sovereign Grand Lodge. By the only living Grand Sire, as Brother Miller said in his tape, he was speaking of the Grand Sires, and that corresponds to your Grand Master, only it is of the Sovereign Grand Lodge. And there's only one alive today, and he is D.D. Monroe of the jurisdiction of New Mexico. And he wrote this valediction, and I would like to read it to you. It says, I am an odd fellow. I believe in the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. I believe in friendship, love, and truth as the ultimate destinies of all mankind. I believe my home, my church, my temple, my lodge, and my community deserve my best work, my modest pride, my earnest faith, and my deepest loyalty. As I perform my duty to visit the sick, relieve the distressed, to bury the dead, and educate the orphan, and as I work with others to build a better world, because in spirit and in truth, I am and must always be grateful to my Creator, faithful to my country, and fraternal to my fellow man, because I am an odd fellow. I want to say thank you again, and just remember that today will never come again. Use it or lose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Grandmaster. We've already worn out one master of ceremonies. This one was already tired when he came. Our president, or our master of ceremonies, had to another meeting, and he had to attend, so he asked me to pinch hit for him the rest of the program. Sister Vez, we would like to hear from you, and I'm quite sure that you got something to say.
Thank you, Master Ceremonies. Distinguished guests, sisters, brothers, and friends. I'm not going to talk too long this afternoon because I know it's getting late. But I want to thank you for this invitation today. It has been an honor to me to be here and help you celebrate your 100th year. And also to be here when Brother Campbell received his 50-year pin. I hope someday to receive one myself. I've got about 30 years to go. It is so nice to greet Rebecca's in Oddfellows Hall or on the street, assisting each other who might be in plight, regardless of need, day or night, in improving one's lodge, community, and nation. Friendship, love, and truth we cannot ration. Now, of course, our three links to me is very important, and when we think about those three words, friendship, love, and truth, we think about a lot. Friendship, let our friendship show. Friendship is only purchased by friendship. Love. Love is a small word, but it means an awful lot to all of us. It binds us all together. And under love, may we say that our youth is very important. I feel that our youth of today are going to be our Oddfellows and Rebeccas of tomorrow. We've got to interest them in our order. We've got to help them. Now, our youth committee chairman is here this afternoon, Sister Christine Ramsey, and she instituted a Theta Rho Girls Club yesterday, the anniversary of our 150th year of Odd Fellowship. To me, this is a great honor that we had, that we could institute a Theta Rho Girls Club on this wonderful anniversary. And Christine, would you stand? I'd like for them to see you. It's Like the story I heard about the little boy that was asking his father a lot of questions. And you know how we parents are when we are asked questions sometimes. The father got real angry, and he said, he just kind of stomped around, you know how fathers do sometimes when they're kind of put on the spot. And the mother said, "Son, what did you do to your father that caused him to be so angry?" He said, "I didn't do anything, Mother. I just asked him a few questions." She said, "Well, why would that make him angry?" He said, "It wasn't that I was asking questions. It's because he couldn't answer them." So that's the kind of way we are sometimes about our youth. We let them ask questions, but we don't answer them. So let's answer them. Let's get behind them. Let's get more Federal Girls Clubs in our state and junior lodges. I would also like to say thank you for the song that was 2 songs that is in our program. I enjoyed them very much. I'm sorry the sister had to leave, that I could not thank her here before you all, but to me, they are both have a meaning. Invisible hands. Have you ever listened to the words of invisible hands? To me, you can almost feel God's touch. This is love. Our last link is truth. We have to have truth in order to make friendship and love. We need to work for our order more and more. Now, in closing, I want to read to you a little poem that I found that is entitled, "What is a Friend?" What is a friend? A friend is one who takes you by the hand, who listens to your troubles and tries to understand, who comforts you in sickness and rejoices in your health, and who is always at your side in poverty or wealth, who does not ask for payment or expects the slightest share, and who will keep your secret when entrusted to his care. A friend is one who really means the praises that he presents and criticizes only to promote your abilities, who always serves you faithfully and is sincere and true, and who would merely like to have the same respect from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Betty. And you beat me to the punch. I didn't notice it until about half of the program's over. Sister Christine is out there, and was going to introduce her when I got around to it, but I'm glad you did anyhow. Does any of the other brothers here have anything to say? Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking. We should have a word from him. And pardon me just a second. The reason I set this up here, this other tape is approximately 5 hours recording of the history of this lodge on it. And this part of the program is going to be tacked on to the end of that, and 50 years from now they can hear what we had to say this evening. And I'd be glad to pay it back to you just a minute, Joe, what it sounds like. Friend Gordon, the mic's yours. Yeah. Yes, sir, I can get you right there. Just stand still.
I just want to say I'm happy to be here. I want to thank Brother Camel for the kind invitation, and I wouldn't have missed it for anything in the world. I think things of this kind are appropriate to the extent that if you and I are going to leave the next generation something to look back on through posterity, it's going to have to be through records of this kind. Because when you go looking for records around some of these lodge halls, they come up mighty scarce. The committee is to be commended for the untiring work that they have done. And I think it's a wonderful thing, and I have just enjoyed the whole afternoon immensely.
Thank you. Brother Gunn? Did you have another? Sister?
Yeah, Sister Bible.
Sure.
I know. Something to say I know.
Come over here. We want you. Come on. We want to put this on the end of our historical tape tonight. Speak right up, just like you was mad at me. Talk mean to me. Now, talk natural then.
Grandmaster Darrell and Sister Betty and all distinguished guests, I'm very happy to be here this evening, and I bring you greetings from the Grand LEA of the encampment, Auxilia, Missouri. And I want to thank Brother Camel for inviting us to this lovely meeting, and I've enjoyed your program so very much. Well, thank you.
Now,
I had 15's name down here on this card, which wasn't handed to me. I hadn't overlooked her, and I was going to get to it.
Well, she's one of the lucky ones now. She's received 2 introductions then. Anyhow, we're glad to have you, Christine. And I'm going to call on you in just a minute. I see some brothers from over in Kansas. You know, you heard a while ago on the tape about them coming over here from 20 towns. Well, I don't see that many represented. But, Brother Frank, we're sure glad to have you over here tonight. And if we had a couple of hours to spend, we'd call on you for a talk, because I know you're capable of talking that long. Yes, sir. Brother Elmer, to round out the program, we'd like to have one last word from you, and of course we want it on the tape. Come over here.
It seems like I've been on this program plenty already today. I think I'd better go closer.
Yeah.
It seems as though I've been on this program off and on all through it, and it seems like they're getting tired of hearing of E.J. Camel. So I'll just say thank you all. I'm glad you're all here.
Thank you, Brother Camel. Before we close this meeting, I have an announcement to make. They say confession is good for the soul, and I have one to make. Along about the middle of the history of Bates Lodge number 180, I said that Brother George Sterrett was the last Grand Sire of the Sovereign Grand Lodge. I was in error there, because after having made the tape, I received a copy of the extra edition of the International Oddfellow commemorating the 150th anniversary of the order. In it was an article written on this very subject. It states that Brother D.D. Monroe of New Mexico was the last Grand Sire, and that Brother C.A. Wheeler was the first full-term Sovereign Grand Master. I'm glad that this edition of the International Oddfellow arrived in time for me to make this correction on this tape.
If you will all please rise, we'll be dismissed by Brother Buford Berry, please.
Almighty Father, we pray Thee to bless whatever of good we have accomplished at this time, and forgive what we have done amiss. We now commend ourselves to Thy care and protection. May the Lord bless us and keep us. May the Lord lift up His fatherly countenance upon us, and give us peace now and forevermore. Amen.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, and future listeners to this tape, this is the way Bates Lodge number 180 I.O.O.F. celebrated its centennial year and the 150th anniversary of the order. On behalf of the Noble Grand, Vice Grand, and all the brothers of Bates Lodge number 180 of the Independent Order of Oddfellows here in Butler, Missouri, this is Leonard Miller saying thank you for your attendance and your attention. Thank you and goodbye.